The orphan boy who built Domino's. Thomas Stephen Monaghan was born on March 25, 1937, in Ann Arbor, Michigan. For the first few years, he had a mother, a father, and his younger brother, James. Then everything changed. When Tom was only 4 years old, his father died. His mother was suddenly left to support 2 little boys on her own. She was a nurse, but balancing work and raising 2 children became extremely difficult. For roughly 2 years she struggled to keep the family together. Finally, when Tom was about 6 years old, she made an agonizing decision. She placed Tom and his younger brother Jim in St. Joseph's Home for Boys in Jackson, Michigan, an orphanage run by Catholic nuns. Tom remained there for much of his childhood, until around age 12. Imagine what that meant for a 6-year-old. His father was gone. His mother was alive, but he couldn't live with her. Instead of sleeping at home with his family, he slept in a large institution among rows of other boys. Later accounts of St. Joseph's describe a highly disciplined life. The boys lived according to strict routines, and punishment could be harsh. Yet Tom would later say that the orphanage also gave him something that remained important throughout his life, his Catholic faith. One nun in particular, Sister Barada, encouraged him. As a boy, Tom even thought he might someday become a priest. When Tom was about 12, he left the orphanage and returned to his mother. But the reunion did not create the stable family life he might have hoped for. The arrangement did not work out, and Tom was eventually sent to live and work on a farm. He worked there and eventually helped support himself. So by his teenage years, Tom had already experienced things many children never face. The death of a parent, separation from his mother, years in an orphanage, instability at home and having to work for himself. He wasn't growing up with money or business connections. He was trying to find somewhere he belonged. He dreamed of becoming a priest. For a while, Tom thought religion might provide that direction. He entered St. Joseph Seminary in Grand Rapids, hoping eventually to become a priest. But that dream failed too. He had disciplinary problems and was eventually expelled from the seminary. It was another rejection. The boy who had already lost his father and spent years away from his family had now lost the future he imagined for himself. But another interest was developing inside him. Architecture. Tom loved the work of famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright, and he began imagining that perhaps he could become an architect instead. That dream would eventually lead him toward college. But first, there was the military. The Marines changed him. In 1956, at about 19 years old, Tom joined the United States Marine Corps. He served until 1959 and received an honorable discharge. The discipline he learned there became important later when he was running restaurants and working extraordinarily long hours. After 3 years in the Marines, Tom finally had some savings. For perhaps the first time, his future looked promising. He could go to college. He could study architecture. He could build a normal life. And then he made a terrible financial decision. He lost his savings. After leaving the Marines in 1959, Tom invested his savings in an oil well venture. The investment went badly. He lost his savings. At 22 years old, he was nearly back where he had started. Still, he enrolled at the University of Michigan, hoping to study architecture. But without much money, paying for school was going to be difficult. Then his younger brother Jim came to him with an idea. And that idea had nothing to do with architecture. It involved pizza. The little pizza shop that changed everything. Jim had become a mailman. On his route, he learned about a small pizza restaurant in Ypsilanti, Michigan, near Eastern Michigan University. The restaurant was called Domino'S. Its owner wanted to sell. Tom and Jim didn't have the money simply sitting in a bank account. They borrowed $900 and purchased the pizza business in 1960. Their plan sounded simple. Jim and Tom would divide the working hours. Tom could operate the restaurant while continuing his education. The pizza shop would help pay his college expenses. Then Tom would become an architect. That was the plan. Instead, the struggling pizza shop swallowed his life. Tom later explained that he had entered the pizza business to pay his way through architecture school, but the business was losing so much money that he never returned to his architecture studies. He became a college dropout. Once again, another dream disappeared. Then his brother wanted out. The brothers' partnership didn't last long. Jim had a secure job as a mailman and did not want to give it up for the exhausting life of running the pizza restaurant. So in 1961, Jim gave his share of the pizza business to Tom. What did Tom give his brother in exchange? Their Volkswagen Beetle. The very car they had been using to deliver pizzas. Think about how strange that decision must have looked. Jim received a car. Tom received complete ownership of a struggling pizza store. At that moment, the Volkswagen may have looked more valuable than the business. But Tom now had something he had rarely possessed during his childhood. Something that was completely his responsibility. And he became obsessed with making it work. The future millionaire slept in his pizza shop. The early years were anything but glamorous. Tom reportedly worked extraordinarily long weeks. Accounts describe roughly 100-hour work weeks. When he couldn't afford proper accommodation, he sometimes slept inside the pizza shop. There was no billionaire lifestyle. No mansion. No private jet. No corporate office. No huge Domino'S headquarters. Just a young man working hour after hour inside a small Michigan pizza restaurant. He developed a rule. When he was at work, he wouldn't sit down. That same intense work ethic was expected of his early employees. Even after getting married, he lived very simply. In 1962, Tom married Marjorie "Marge" Zybach, whom he had met while making a pizza delivery to a college dormitory. But marriage didn't suddenly bring luxury. The couple lived in a small trailer, because Tom wanted to put as much money as possible back into his business. Years later, Monaghan remembered wearing battered clothes, driving delivery vehicles rather than buying the cars he wanted, and delaying comforts because he believed sacrificing then would allow him to build something larger later. And slowly, the struggling restaurant improved. Tom noticed something important. College students wanted food that was simple, inexpensive, and delivered quickly. So instead of trying to operate like an ordinary restaurant, he began designing the business around pizza delivery. That would become Domino's great advantage. Dominick's becomes Domino's. As Tom added stores, he wanted all of them to have one recognizable name. But the original owner of Dominick's would not allow him to continue expanding under the Dominick's name. So a new name was needed. In 1965, an employee named Jim Kennedy reportedly suggested Domino's. Tom liked it. And Domino's Pizza, Inc. was born. The famous logo initially contained 3 dots, representing the 3 stores Monaghan had at the time. His early idea had reportedly been to add another dot whenever a new restaurant opened. Fortunately, that idea didn't continue. There would eventually be far too many dots. But before the empire came, disaster arrived. The business burns. In February 1968, a fire swept through the original Domino's location. The pizza shop reopened surprisingly quickly, but Domino's headquarters and its first commissary were devastated. Around $40,000 in stored goods were destroyed, according to histories of the company. For a young company that was still fighting for survival, this was enormous. But Tom rebuilt. Then he made another mistake. A mistake that came frighteningly close to destroying Domino's completely. Tom grew too fast. Success had made him ambitious. Domino's began expanding aggressively. But Tom pushed the company into markets where the brand wasn't yet strong enough. Some new stores performed badly. Debt accumulated. Problems multiplied. By May 1, 1970, the situation became so serious that Monaghan actually lost control of Domino's to creditors during a financial restructuring. Think about this moment. He had already lost his father, lived in an orphanage, failed at becoming a priest, lost his savings, left college, worked 100-hour weeks, slept in his restaurant, survived a fire, And now he was in danger of losing the company he had sacrificed everything to build. For many entrepreneurs, that would have been the end of the story. For Tom Monaghan, it became another beginning. He fought his way back. The turnaround arrangement did not last. By 1971, Monaghan regained the opportunity to run the business. He then personally worked to convince unhappy franchisees that Domino's could survive and that they should continue working with him rather than abandon the company. This time he became more disciplined about expansion. And he concentrated on something Domino's could do exceptionally well: deliver pizzas quickly. Instead of offering an enormous restaurant menu, Domino's streamlined operations. Instead of making delivery an extra service, delivery became the business model. Monaghan also pushed for better corrugated cardboard pizza boxes that could be stacked without crushing the pizzas and that helped retain heat during delivery. That sounds simple today. At the time, it helped Domino's drivers carry several hot pizzas at once. The system was becoming scalable. And that changed everything. One store became thousands. Once Domino's found a formula that could be repeated, expansion accelerated. Monaghan developed a franchise system in which future franchisees often first had to prove themselves operating an existing Domino's store. The company became exceptionally good at reproducing the same type of pizza operation in one college town after another. By the mid-1980s, the growth was extraordinary. Domino's was opening nearly 3 stores every day. The boy who once slept in an orphanage had become extremely wealthy. And one of the strangest parts of his story was still coming. The poor boy buys his childhood dream. When Tom was a poor child in Michigan, one thing gave him pleasure: baseball. He loved the Detroit Tigers. Decades later, in 1983, the former orphan didn't merely buy a ticket to watch the Tigers. He bought the Detroit Tigers. And the following year, 1984, the Tigers won the World Series. It is an almost unbelievable transformation. Orphanage foster homes Marines broke student tiny pizza shop billionaire businessman owner of his childhood baseball team. But even wealth didn't end the dramatic changes in Monaghan's life. He discovered that money wasn't enough. Once enormously wealthy, Tom bought many of the things he had been unable to afford when he was young. Expensive automobiles, aircraft, a helicopter, rare Frank Lloyd Wright items, and other luxury possessions. But eventually he began questioning what all that wealth meant. After reading C.S. Lewis's writings about pride, Monaghan said he underwent a major change in thinking. He began selling many of the expensive possessions he had accumulated and devoted increasing amounts of his fortune to religious, educational, and charitable projects. Eventually, in 1998, after nearly 4 decades associated with Domino's, Monaghan sold his controlling interest to Bain Capital in a deal valued at roughly $1 billion. And that is why his story is stronger than simply a man who invented Domino's. Tom Monaghan's life contains several separate failures. His father died. His family broke apart. He spent years in an orphanage. His dream of the priesthood failed. His architecture dream failed. He lost his savings. His brother left the business. He slept in the restaurant. His headquarters burned. Rapid expansion nearly destroyed the company. He temporarily lost control of Domino's. And yet the little pizza store survived.